Hey everybody, this is Pete, and in this video I want to demonstrate a technique for building an iFeature that contains an internalized pattern. So this could be very useful for some customers I've worked with, for example woodworkers, where they get a rather generic cabinet model or something and they want to put the joinery holes in the edge of a board. So it's not necessarily going to be very good for assembly feature patterning because it won't treat the iFeature pattern as a feature pattern. So if you had 10 holes and you wanted to populate each one of those holes with a fastener, it doesn't do that in the Inventor assembly. So this is a little bit better suited for machining. But if you did want to use it in an assembly, you could always link parameters and things like that. So just to save a little bit of time, I've already knocked out the board and I've configured the parameters for the pattern. So the first three are for the board, but then I've got a hole diameter, hole depth. Of course, we could add those if we want to control the characteristics of the hole. And then here's the pattern stuff. I've got a quantity, an end distance, and then the spacing. So the spacing is going to be an equation where I'm taking the overall length, I'm subtracting the end distance by 2, meaning I want a certain distance from each end, and then I'm dividing the rest of that distance by the whole quantity minus 1, or the number of spaces, and then that computes the spacing. So this is all set up. Again, you can kind of take a look at that if you want to follow along. And I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty, which is creating a work point. So when you're working with iFeatures, you try to minimize the number of references, but I do need to create a work point where I want to base the pattern off of, something I can measure that end distance from, so I'm going to pick on this midpoint right there. So now that that's in play, I'm going to go ahead and create a sketch. I'll go ahead and look at the front face of the sketch, and then I'm going to project that point. So now we've got that set up on our sketch. I don't really want it to generate a second hole, so I'm going to deselect the center point format. It's there, but now it's just a singular point. And then from there, we are going to generate a line. This is going to be that end dist. So you could hit delete here, look up the parameter. Whoop. That would be the whole end dist. Cool. Hit the tab key, and now we just draw that out straight across. So there is our location, and I could either stick a point on the end, or I can click on this point and make it a center point format, and there's going to be the location for the hole. Now the reason I'm drawing the line, which you'll see in a second, is another thing that we want to do with iFeatures besides limit the number of references is we want to internalize references as much as possible as well. So we're going to eventually use this line as the direction for our pattern. So once I've done with that, I'll finish the sketch, go back to an ISO view, and then we can apply the hole. And I'm just a very generic hole, distance option through the thing. We can of course grab the parameters. That way later on, if we wanted to add controls, we could do that. Where's the depth? There we go, there's the depth. Grab that, and that's going to be the hole depth. So again, pretty straightforward deal there. Hit OK, and there's the hole. So we need the sketch to generate the pattern. So I'll share the sketch, and then we'll use a rectangular pattern. So the feature will be the hole, of course. The direction, that's where we're going to grab that sketch line. And then the quantity and the spacing will, of course, be the parameters that we're using, like so. So that's it. Leave it as a spacing type. You hit OK, and we're ready to rock. So that's it. I'll hit save, and that's the setup piece. So pretty straightforward, normal patterny type stuff. Now we're going to go ahead and extract the iFeature. So we pick the hole. It automatically picks the rectangular point. So standard type stuff applies here. So I can right click and rename this hole pattern, whatever, iFeature. But there are a couple of wrinkles that we want to be aware of. So one of the first ones is you cannot have equations in your iFeature. It will get very cranky. It's looking for real numbers here. So if you're using an equation to generate a value, you can still do that. You just can't expose it for the end users to modify. And then of course all the normal limits, lists, etc. are available. So if you only want to give people a certain number of depths or a range of depths, you could do that, hole diameters, etc. So I'm not going to worry about that. But the next thing is we have a sketch plane, which is very normal for an iFeature, but I also want to be able to place it quickly. So I can add, by double left clicking, the reference point in as well. So I want to be able to place the sketch plane, and I want to be able to locate that midpoint. And you can move these around. So if you'd rather pick the sketch plane first, just left click, hold and drag. You can rename these. So I could say edge mid point reference, right? Or something like that. And you could even write in a description, pick the reference midpoint or something. So anyway, you can configure the message, you can configure the prompts to accomplish your goal. And then once you've got it, all the limits set up, the names, everything the way you want, you go ahead and save it. I'm going to save it in my workspace in one of my YouTube model areas, just so we can call it, we'll call it the hole pattern IDE. So I'll of course replace the one that's already there. Absolutely. And there we go. So of course we want to test it. So I'll quickly knock out a part and we'll box it out. And I'll just create the parameter on the fly. I'll just call this board length equals, let's say 24. And then I'm not going to worry about the other parameters because in this case, they're just not important. So there's a board. And now we can insert that iFeature onto our board. Grab my workspace, grab this here. There we go. So that's the one we just published. Hit OK. And of course, here it is, right? Sketch plane 1. Now note when you place it, it tells you pick a sketch plane. And then we go to this one, pick the reference midpoint. So I'll pick that. If you're curious what that looks like, you can hit refresh. And if anything didn't look correct, you could, of course, reselect either one of these options and refresh it again. Now to link up though, notice that these holes clearly aren't in the right position because the board's not 18 inches. So you can come over here, add in the list parameters, and you can actually link it to the board. And if you want to refresh it, you can see most of the time that updates nicely. And we hit finish, and there you have it. But let's say that we want to add an additional control to this, and we want to control the hole quantity from this host component. Well, all we would need to do is come up here, add in a new parameter, hole quantity, of course make it unitless, and let's say we want 6 or 8 or whatever holes. Well, all we need to do to get that in there is you can just simply grab this name, copy it, and paste it into that field for your iFeature. And now you can see that those parameters are linked together. You can see the model now clearly has 6 holes. And if you edit the iFeature, you'll see that that is automatically taken place as well. So you could edit the iFeature, but it's just faster to do it within the parameter table. Anyway, that's a quick video kind of showing how you could build this type of a feature. I hope you found it helpful. If you have any questions or comments, please don't be afraid to share, and have a blessed day.